G'day, folks. How are you? Hope you're having a reasonably cool sort of a Tuesday. It has been fairly chilly in Bris Vegas, I got to tell you today. I'm back into the rugged up jacket for most of the day. Hasn't been much fun. What did I get done today after I did that quick live for you this morning? Well, I got absolutely nothing done. Very disappointed. Was planning to help a friend deliver a caravan today so that she got somewhere to live. And unfortunately, best laid plans, you know how all that goes. One thing led to another. And the vehicle we were going to use, because mine won't tow it, unfortunately became unavailable. So we're going to have to do that again on another day, probably this weekend at some stage. Who was first in the room tonight? G'day, Chris. Nice to see you in. Aussie Sue was in too. Lovely to see you too, Sue. Davo, DM's in, Deb's in, Elizabeth. There's a new name. I haven't seen Elizabeth's in a little while. Thank you. You like the caricature? I love the caricature too. And I've actually got to get a hold of the lady who put it all together, Danny, and see whether or not she might be interested in doing some other stuff for us, because her artwork is getting a lot of comments. So, yeah, she's doing really well. Not working too hard. Well, it's not a matter of working hard or not working hard. It's just a job that just keeps on going, and new things pop up every day, new challenges pop up every day, and occasionally we have the odd little win, or we get a breath of hope blown in our direction. I guess one of the things that I could show you regarding that hope would be something like this, which was pulled up out of the Australian over the weekend. The second story here, Drumgold betrayal of justice in the national capital. There was another one that said, Drumgold, time as DPP is surely at an end, and then reopen all of Drumgold's cases, say legal experts. That is Shane Drumgold, the DPP, Director of Public Prosecutions from the ACT. He is the subject of a very, very scathing report handed down by an ACT judge, who has also been brought into question because of some charges that he may or may not be facing, allegedly. He looks like he may be facing charges that could see him inside for up to 6 months for other things that he has done previously. Now, there are some rather interesting reports going out now saying that the gentleman that wrote this report is basically helping out the Liberal Party here. What truth? I don't know. How would you tell? It's only the insiders that are going to know, and the likes of Shane Drumgold, who was the DPP up until last Sunday when he resigned, after this report was made public. It was leaked to two media institutions, the Australian being one of them, and Janet Albrighton was able to break the story, if you like, about some of the very poor decisions, let's say, that Shane Drumgold made as the head of the DPP in the ACT. He was appointed in late 2019 and, of course, managed to sit through the job during the height of the protests in Canberra and, of course, the ongoing protests from the Canberra Standers. Hello, guys. Hope you're all going well. Dan, I hear good news about your car. This is good. And the trailer, even better. These are the people who have been fed through the ACT court system at Shane Drumgold's behest. He has, on some occasions, it's alleged, overreached with charges. He has worked in some areas allegedly unethically, and some of his decision-making in certain regards to some cases is being brought into question. Now, how does that relate to, well, Dan is probably, veteran Dan is probably the one most through the court system down in Canberra at the moment. I think Dan's, I want to say over the last couple of years, he's probably had more than a dozen charges thrown at him at various different times. Some of those have been upheld, and he's been excluded from certain areas on appeal. He's won those rights back to go into certain areas of Canberra, but they don't make it easy at all, and they trump up the charges and try and load up the charges as best they can. And Paul Offey is a classic example of that. Paul Offey, at worst, is guilty of a very minor traffic infringement, at worst. What they have done is effectively handed him a hamburger with a lot, as I'm told the police like to refer to it. That means they will load you up with every charge they possibly can, and they will, add little extra words into those charges, like aggravated, which ups that charge again to a more significant level and a higher level of court where you need to appear. That, of course, means in a higher level of court, you stand to have a much higher level of punishment or penalty applied to you as well. And essentially, the ACT in my looking size, young lawyers who I think are probably overworked, who I think have been taught by their superiors the path of least resistance. Certainly when it comes to legal aid, and I can only speak for the ACT as I haven't had any experiences with legal aid outside of the ACT, but the ACT legal aid is beyond useless. All the ACT legal aid department are there to do is to gain a conviction. Now, they might say they're going to look after you for the 4 or 5 charges that you are facing potentially, but they do not work on a defense for you. They don't work on a defense. In fact, I can tell you from experience, they make no inquiry into what defense you might have. They don't look at your witnesses. They don't look at anything. All they do is keep coming back to you with offers to plead guilty to something. That's all. And there's a reason for that. There's a reason they want you to plead guilty, because guilty pleas and the penalties that stem from those guilty pleas, be it fines in currency or in Paul's case, it would potentially be a fine, a jail term, and confiscation and sale of his only asset, which would be that truck, the Freedom truck. Now, as Paul points out, they've had this truck now for, coming up on a couple of years, nearly 3 years. In fact, it'll be 3 years in February. And they have made no move to allow him to work. It is Paul's only way to work. The vehicle had movie jobs lined up and all sorts of other things. I'm not sure where they sit now. I know the movie company concerned has also got a lien against the truck, so that the rather interesting way that the COCA lawyers work in Canberra, that is the proceeds of crime lawyers, they're the ones who are trying to, well, they're not trying to prove that Paul's vehicle is a proceed of crime, because they can't prove that. Paul has every receipt known to man for that vehicle. So why are they still withholding it? Why are they still hanging on? Why are they, we know that they tried to sell it out from underneath him without informing him. We know that they wrote a letter and sent it to him 6 weeks later, saying that, 4 weeks ago, we were going to sell your truck. It was only through the grace of God that he managed to get into a court and stop that happening. And it wasn't legal aid who got him into the court for that. So be prepared. Legal aid might in some cases be useful, but for the most part, all they are going to do is offer you a plead guilty to this and they'll drop that, or they plead guilty to that and they'll make this charge lesser. And they're not offering you any kind of defense. So bear that in mind if you are going for legal aid and you require that sort of help. I think that we're going to see some interesting things happening in Canberra in the next few weeks, and a lot of that is going to be surrounding what happens in the courts of the ACT. I think we're going to see a lot more of Shane Drumgold in the newspapers and spread-eagled. I think he's going to be sacrificed, but not unworthily. I think he has made some pretty poor decisions. He has in my opinion, shown some very clear bias and has worked to make life as difficult as possible for those in the community who least deserve it and who can least afford it. Shane Drumgold and the DPP and the ACT are bullies. That's all they've ever been. And hopefully, with this review and what was coming from Parliament and what will happen after all of that further down the chain, is going to be very serious. There was going to be a major shake-up. Interestingly, when you delve into the ACT court system, it's a hybrid. That's about the best way of saying it. G'day, Keefe. Good to see you in there too, mate. I'm getting halfway down. Oh, God, people are throwing in all sorts of comments this evening. I'll try and catch up with a few of you. Oh, God, love you, Vicky. Thank you so much. Looking forward to coming to South Australia too, Vicky. Vince is pushing for it very, very hard. Vince has been invaluable to me, especially today. So I just want to give a public thank you to Vince. Vince is the web guy, if you're not sure who I'm talking about, who looks after everything behind the Voice of Freedom webpage. And he's a great sounding board for me and a great friend to me. So I just want to thank him again for the help that he's given today. Voice of Freedom wouldn't be online today without Vince. So thank you, mate. I can't thank you enough. It means the world to me. And he's also been helping me out with another problem. As you know, I've decided that I'm going to start something of a radio station. Now, where I can do this and how I can do this legally, well, I'm still sort of sorting that end of it out. But one of the big issues that I was facing was being able to get enough music to essentially show you what's going on, and to play enough music, I beg your pardon, so that people wouldn't get the same song coming over and over and over again. I'm just seeing if I can bring up something to show you here, and I don't think it's going to allow me, unfortunately, because it is a very different program and runs. Maybe it will. I was going to bring you up the radio station and give you a bit of a look and show you how an automated radio station works. But the big problem was music. Now, sitting over here to my right, your left, is a computer that was donated to me toward the end of last week. It has about 20,000 songs on it. Songs from all eras. Be well worthwhile, a great library to get a hold of. Unfortunately, the computer that houses the library with 20,000 songs on it dates back to 1997, 98, maybe 98. It is currently running Windows XP. That'll give you an idea of how old it is. All I want to do is copy the music off the drive and put it onto a terabyte drive or something, a couple of terabytes, and voila, we have a radio station library. Oh, no, nothing's that easy. You can't plug anything built recently into anything built, well, an age ago. So Vince is helping me sort that out as well today. And we've had a little bit of fun before the show trying to get it going, and I'm sure we'll have a little bit more fun afterwards. But I am determined to get this up and running, and I want to do it legally. I want to do it right. So don't want to go and get anybody in trouble, so at least of all me. So I think I can get away with running a show with Vision on Rumble. My reading so far of their fine print seems to suggest I can. So we might have a go at it tomorrow morning and just see whether or not I can get an hour out and just see whether or not it'll actually play and work. This is about to get very interesting. It looks like Vince is logging in on my computer again. Very interesting. Thank you, Vince. Just signaling me. So yeah, there's some interesting things going on. Let me have a bit of a glance down here. Oh yeah, Ruby's funeral. Yeah. So Ruby West passed away. For many of us, we've run into Ruby over our time. She was a warrior, absolutely a warrior. Her funeral is tomorrow. Thank you, Pineapple. It's been a pretty bad week. Last week, I lost two people close to me. Somebody who is also very close to me lost someone very close to them. They're starting to get closer to home, I'm finding. Maybe, it's been closer to home for you for some time. I last week particularly had two deaths that didn't rock me so much, but were close to me. People that were very near and dear to me at some point in my life, and they've passed away through unexplained heart attacks. For the want of a better term, chest infections and heart attacks. I was speaking with Ron Fenwick today. Now, you might have seen the Rumble interview that I did with Ron last week. I will have Ron on again at some stage this week. I'm hopeful. He's very busy at the moment, and trying to nail him down for an hour or so might be a little bit difficult. But he has a few other things he wants to share, and he's very grateful for everybody that has contacted him after his interview here on the Voice of Freedom. There have been a few other people who've contacted him for interviews since then too. It's the first time that Ron had ever done an interview here, so now he's becoming an old hand at it. God love him. We are Ron, I'm sure, will be able to bring me up to speed with a bit about that. Over the course of the last 3 days, I have been hearing some amazing stories about the curing benefits of chlorine dioxide. No, we're not talking about the stuff you throw in the pool. This is something very different. Chlorine monoxide is what you throw in the pool. Chlorine dioxide is a whole different beast, and this beast will clean your system right out. It is a very useful aid for people suffering from a variety of ailments. Some of those ailments could be things related to the jab. Some of the other ailments might be rashes and reactions to different stimulus in your environment. You might be getting allergic reactions. One story that I was made aware of over the weekend was an allergic reaction in a little girl. This little girl is a special needs girl, so it's hard to explain to her to hold still or do whatever. She had a very, very bad reaction. She too is jabbed, and I think is 4 deep. For no apparent reason, she broke out in blisters on her legs, on her thighs, inner thighs, legs, front leg, back leg, everywhere. Parents were a bit confused. Doctors didn't know what the hell was going on. A friend of mine who has chlorine dioxide and takes it with them everywhere said, "Do you mind if I try this?" And within hours, all the blisters were gone. And chlorine dioxide, just a couple of drops on the skin is all. Chlorine dioxide is just like spray, so or you put those drops into water and you drink them. Now, depending on what you are trying to treat yourself, depends on how many drops you want to put in. But apparently, it's not recommended to put any more than 10 drops in any one drink, and only have one of those drinks every day. There are other, if you like, ways to treat yourself using this, where you treat yourself twice a day. You just don't take 10 drops at a time. One in the morning and another drink at night, just drops in water, and these will clean your system out. I want to learn more about how they clean you out, but it has something to do with interrupting the stem cell or the stem, the spike, if you like, that manages to breach and is the dangerous part of this whole vaccination process. That mRNA spike is how they get through cellular walls and into places where it shouldn't be. So from what I understand, chlorine dioxide will help clean you out there. Ivermectin, of course, is now freely available to be prescribed by doctors again, but whether or not it is available in your local chemist might be a different matter. I know that the government did relax the laws on being able to prescribe ivermectin, but did they relax the laws on bringing it into the country. We do remember that Clive Palmer got enough ivermectin and enough hydroxychloroquine to dose every person in this country 3 times. And the Australian government stopped it at the border. Now, as far as I'm aware, Clive was going to supply those doses free of charge to the Australian public. But that didn't suit the Australian government at the time under Scott Morrison. It wouldn't have suited now we know for sure, the confidential contract signed by Pfizer, Moderna, and AstraZeneca with the Australian government. We don't know the terms of that contract, but Malcolm Roberts and I guess other senators in estimates this week are trying to make inroads into that for us. They're trying to find out exactly the terms of that Pfizer contract, which the Pfizer executives are claiming is confidential and they will not speak about. And of course, the contract held by the Australian government was signed by a Liberal government, now held by a Labor government. Why wouldn't the Labor government let that contract out? Well, I can tell you why. Because the confidentiality side comes from Pfizer, from AstraZeneca, from Moderna. They don't want the details out. I'm also led to believe that as part of that contract agreement, Australia had to agree to buy 185 million doses of the jab. 185 million doses. And they've mostly been delivered or are being manufactured here in Australia. Of course, they have a use-by date. So this stuff is being produced. Pfizer, Moderna, Pfizer predominantly being paid for it. And it's going where? Into a freezer until it's used-by date, and then where? Down the sink? God, I hope not. Can you imagine what mutants would be growing in the bloody... Oh, God. Yeah, be interesting. But what happens with all those vials, those poisonous vials that have been manufactured here in Australia and overseas and imported here? They've got them stockpiled, but where are they? Are they just going to change the labels and say, oh, this is next year's flu shot? Because we've already established that the medical fraternity have absolutely no morals. Absolutely none. They've done it for the money. They've done it for themselves. They've done it for the greed that they hold within them. They didn't do it for the betterment of you. They didn't do it for the betterment of me. And they certainly didn't do it for the betterment of all humanity. Yes, all right, I might be prepared to believe at the beginning some doctors might have thought they were doing the right thing. But at some point, and I think some point early on in this process, every doctor had to have a think about this whole thing and had to weigh up their morals versus the shit that APRA put on them. And while there were a lot of physicians, nurses that walked away from the job, and that's evidence today, we are still vastly understaffed in our hospitals. Nursing staff way down, doctors way down, to a point now where they're looking at opening up to internationally trained doctors, which is going to make a lot of Uber drivers really happy. You'd be amazed how many Indian Uber drivers out there are fully qualified surgeons or GPs. There are millions of them out there, but they're not allowed to practice here because they weren't qualified. Stanford University in the US, one of the most prestigious medical and legal universities in the world, their qualifications, doctors' qualifications coming out of Stanford are not recognised in Australia. Why? Do we think Griffiths is better? UQ? Melbourne Uni? I know Melbourne Uni used to have a wonderful, wonderful law faculty. Unfortunately, now we're seeing the proceeds because the last time I really was involved with a law faculty or had much knowledge to do with Melbourne law faculty, at least, was back in the days when such glittering names were going through law school at the time. Names like Julia Gillard, names like Bill Shorten, any other Labor politician you want to ask of the time, all went through one of those universities down there, and they were all heavily involved in the political side of university life. They became political staffers for unionists, for lawyers, for politicians, and basically never worked a day in their life. Have always sucked on the public teat. Always sucked on the public teat. Julia Gillard, red-headed clown that it is facing an awful lot of charges. And if you're wondering where they start, it goes way back to Boulder and Kalgoorlie, where she was instrumental in ripping off a fund that was set up by a union over there, a death fund for workers killed in the mines, so that the families would be looked after. She and her boyfriend of the time went over there, told the people in Boulder and Kalgoorlie a whole heap of shit, and essentially took the money out of that fund, put it into an account of their own choosing and control, and those funds, some hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars, were never seen again. Julia Gillard has a lot to answer for, and from what I'm hearing, is being made answer for it. Of course, she gave away $385 billion of our money to the Clintons over time. I think it was $385 million was the first tranche. And then over the course of the next couple of years, she managed to hand out a few $100 million more in return for her retirement job. Because when the Australian people, I don't know, came to their senses, or the voting cheating machine crashed and didn't work right, she was thrown out in her ass along with the rest of the Labor government. And of course, Crud had deposed her again at that stage. She disappeared off to the UN. And what was she given? She was given the chairmanship of International Education for Women. The chairmanship of Advancing International Education for Women, which on the face of it sounds like a magnificent thing, but it's just a junket that she paid for through the Clinton Foundation. She got to hang out and rub shoulders with Hillary quite a lot, and that gave her that kind of access. So it gives you an idea of just how close we were to the top. Well, when she had the money to give, anyway. As soon as 2020 came around, or I beg your pardon, as soon as 2016 came around, Gillard started ducking for cover, just as soon as Trump had won the election. So from 2017, she has been very much trying to act like one of those creatures out of June, just stays underground. You don't see her poke her head up too often, unless the ABC wheel the cow out because they feel that she's got something useful to say. She doesn't. They just need a propagandist or whatever. So pain in the ass, bitch. I'm not very happy with her. You can probably tell. I've never been a bit of a fan of the red-headed clown. Not one iota. G'day to the Keefies. I see a few of you in there. A lot of talk about holding the light, being bright. Yep. I've been dealing a lot with vibrations over the last few days. Last week, if I'm honest, I've felt my vibration lower a bit. And I've tried very hard in a variety of ways to lift that vibration, but I struggled from time to time. It happens to us all. I don't think any of us should be getting upset or down or taking away from a down day any more than actually what it is. Yeah, it's sad. We know people who are passing. Or we get affected by those that we don't know and still know are passing. I mean, all you got to do is pick up a newspaper and have a look at some other 25-year-old, 27-year-old, 32-year-old, 48-year-old, 8-year-old, 12-year-old has died over the weekend. They were running, they were playing sport, they fell over dead. Nothing to see here. Well, it seems like our politicians are starting to ask the right questions. And I know that they have to build their arguments in a certain way in the parliament. They ask a lot of questions that they already know the answers to. In fact, they'd be stupid if they asked a question they didn't know the answer to. But they are building a knowledge base, if you like, and also a timeline. by asking the questions that they do in the way that they do it, and sort of leading, if you like, the people to leave a trail of truth. Now, whether or not that's all going to get put together, I have no idea. But in the last few days, I've seen some pretty good stuff from Malcolm Roberts, who has been asking people within the medical fraternity about deaths and reported deaths. So these guys came from the TGA too, I think, and were trying to explain away how over 1,000 doctors had put forward over 1,000 deaths due to COVID or due to the jab, vaccine injury, and yet the TGA was rewriting those and dismissing them to a group now, I think, of 14 they have confirmed as adverse event deaths. 14 from over 1,000 that were submitted. And none of the people that were being questioned could answer the question of how do you know what these other people have died of? Have you done the autopsies? Well, we know they didn't do the autopsies. We know that autopsies were banned for the most part during the lockdowns because, of course, you can't have the truth getting out. And the truth would have been, as it did get out, it got out through funeral homes, funeral directors, embalmers who were pulling out elasticated blood that was magnetically attracted to itself, hitherto unseen of in, well, medicine and I imagine in funeral home preparation. All of that is coming up. All of that is being exposed. And now I see what Malcolm Roberts is doing. He's exposing it layer by small layer, much like they stuck it on top of us to, convince many that what they were saying was true. So I think what Roberts is doing is very clever. He's laying an information trap, which they need to supply the information for. And it will be glaringly obvious, A, if they refuse to supply that information, or B, if they do provide it and it's been altered, or C, if they provide it and it hasn't been altered. My question would be, how many autopsies were done on people who died and the hospital, because it was in their best interests not to have the person die of a COVID-related illness or any kind of jab sort of invasion, that was in the hospital's best interests to make sure that, oh no, you died of a lung infection, or you had not a heart attack, because heart attacks were not a good thing, but in the early days, brain aneurysms and blood clots, those kind of things were just being written off as every day. Oh, yeah, this is just an occurrence. Until there were too many blood clots to write off as, a freak occurrence. Too many brain aneurysms. Too many hearts just stopping dead in children who were perfectly well 2 days before they got the shot. Perfectly well, 2 days later, on a hockey game or on a soccer pitch, fall down dead. They are going to be made answer for this, folks. They are going to be made answers. Sunflower. Yeah. Well, I'm hopeful that you won't hear the same songs being played over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. But and you like 1940s stuff. You're my girl. I like big band jazz. Never know, might get a bit of big band jazz happening on my radio station. A bit of In the Mood. Glenn Miller. Hey, how would that be? You know, Glenn Miller died, or, well, nobody knows if he died. He just disappeared on my birthday in 1940. What year did he disappear? I want to say 1944, but it might have been 1943. 15th of December, 1940. I want to say 44. Disappeared somewhere over the English Channel, I want to say. He was shot down. Body never found, never recovered. I wonder if he's hiding with Q. Probably not. Stupid. I just said that for the cookers out there. Oh, speaking of the cookers, they've gone a bit quiet. somebody spanked their bum recently. I think dear friend John Wilson might have had a go at them recently because they are tending to be a little bit full of themselves. So I hear anyway. I don't pay any attention to them, so I couldn't tell you what they're doing. Quite honestly, don't care enough. Although I would suggest to Cooker watch if she is watching, and God knows I know you are. For whatever reason, you're a sucker for punishment, or you're in love with me. I can't figure it out. But send me an email. Got something I want to talk to you about, and we'll see what happens. And no, it won't be a date. We're not going for dinner. You'll be fine. It's all good. Something more professional than that. Okay, Callum wants a detox protocol. I'm not jabbed, but you've been with jabbed girls. Yeah, I get your drift. You've been doing some jabbing of the jabbed. Okay, well, start with ivermectin, Callum. Start with ivermectin. It's great for any parasitic kind of infestation you might have. And then be watching a little later in the week. We're going to try and find out a lot more about this chlorine dioxide, which I believe is also very, very good for detoxing your system and cleaning out the spike protein particularly. So I'll try and get those details from Ron, and we'll line up one day later this week. He's heading off. He's got a big weekend planned, so I've got to try and squeeze him in somewhere in between if we can figure that out. Listen to this lady. She knows what she's talking about. Horse pellets, 100% ivermectin. Eriquel. Was that how you say it? Eriquel? Thank you, Sandy. God love you. 100% ivermectin. And they're a pellet. So, so you remember when they were talking about ivermectin being a horse paste? Well, it can come as a paste. And all the tablet is the paste dried out and compressed and put into a tablet form. That's all it is. It's exactly the same product, just with less juice. It's not going to kill you, and all it will do is make you better. And if you don't believe me, look up Africa and type in what is the Sunday pill in Africa, and you will get ivermectin, unless they've changed it because, well, we know that Google was apt to do that sort of thing. But up until at least the COVID farce, it was the Sunday pill in Africa. Everybody got one on Sundays. You go to church, you go anywhere, you get a Sunday pill, and it was ivermectin because it cleaned out the parasites that they picked up in their blood systems, in their bodies, just through day-to-day work and life. So ivermectin, awesome. Get a hold of that. Go to a doctor. You should be able to get the prescription straight away. Hopefully, you'll be able to get that filled at your local chemist. Might be worthwhile poking into the chemist before you go to the doctor. Save yourself. Say, do you stock ivermectin? Can I come and get it with the prescription? If they've got it, yip ya. If they don't, go and find someone who does. That might be the best thing for you. You should be able to get it over the counter. It just is a matter of whether or not the shipments have been coming through customs like they meant to, because I don't think we are making it up here. Springtree has another suggestion there. Mercola is recommending the following. Now, I would caution anybody and everybody not to immediately go writing all this stuff down. Go and find out what all these mixtures are, pouring it in a cup and drinking it, all right? In fact, I might think more about not putting those up, because at the end of the day, I have no idea what any of that is. You probably have no idea what any of that is. And if you go sticking it in a cup without knowing what it is and then swallowing it, well, we used to get warnings like that, doing stupid things like that when we were children, didn't we? Don't drink out of the detergent bottle. Because, I don't know, when I was a kid, we used to store petrol in just about anything that would hold liquid. And petrol on some occasions, depending on whether it was super, had the lead in it, that could look like a reasonable raspberry cordial if you were, looking at it through one eye and a bit of a squint. Ripping the top off. Never imagine how kids were able to drink that and not know that it wasn't raspberry cordial because, well, seriously. Yeah, no fun at all. The desal plant in Sydney's still there. Is it actually making any desal water? The one on the Gold Coast is still there too. It's been going now for, it must be 15 years. And I don't know that it's produced much by way of usable water for anything or anyone. during drought periods. I am aware that there are some very serious card games get played at that water treatment plant down there beside the Gold Coast Airport and the desal plant there. Very serious card games because there's nothing much else to do. Apparently, once a week they produce 100 litres or might be 1,000 litres of desal water just to prove that the system still works. But for the most part, they run around in their working time of the day, replacing the rusted out bits that have just been sitting there with salt water in them. So I don't know. Desal plants. It was a great Labor plan, desal plants to save the country from drought. And all it really did was put a lot of money in unions' hands and give us a whole heap of infrastructure that isn't being used. In Queensland, of course, they extended it a little bit bigger. That not only did they build the desal plant, they decided that because it was going to be needed, they would build a second pipeline. So there are 3 dams in the southeast corner. There is the Somerset Dam, the Wivenhoe Dam, and the Hinds Dam, which is out behind the Gold Coast. Now, Somerset and Wivenhoe are connected by a pipe, and Wivenhoe and Hinds are connected by a pipe. They decided that if we were going to be able to create water and fill the dams, we'd have to push water back up that pipe. And of course, that pipe was only built to go one way. And believe it or not, it's uphill from the Gold Coast to Wivenhoe Dam. So they spent years building this pipeline, another pipeline, to pump water from Hinds Dam back into Wivenhoe should the levels there get low again. And I'm not actually sure if it's even working to this day. Apparently, they have no end of hassle with the pumping houses. Once again, more bureaucrats doing bullshit and feathering their own nest with a brown paper bag payoff. I was trying to explain to somebody over the weekend that The Voice is exactly the same kind of deal. And, of course, we've had Albo up on the weekend doing all great things for The Voice. You can see him playing the game here. Nothing could be truer. The Voice is an absolute stitch-up. The question that I have for you folks is, if the Aboriginal population in this country is 3%, then that 3% all voting yes is not going to change the outcome of this referendum. All right? 3% of the population isn't going to change it. So why putting on the song and dance and going up to Gama for the weekend and reiterating his position that, we will implement the Uluru Statement from the Heart in full. In full. I don't know if you have seen it yet. If you have seen it, I would hope that you are pretty shocked about it, because some of the details in this Uluru Statement from the Heart have been hard to get, especially if you are talking about Anthony Albanese's description of it. I'm just trying to bring it up here. I'm seeing if I've got it. I don't. Anthony Albanese's description of the Uluru Statement from the Heart is a singular A4 page. It'll take you about 2 minutes to read it. There is nothing in it to worry about. Well, thanks to Sky News and Peter Credlin and a Freedom of Information request, we now have all 26 pages, A4 in size, not one, Albo, you lying prick, all 26 pages of the Uluru Statement from the Heart. Now, I'm going to send this through to Vince, and he will put it up on the website at vofhq.com. I urge you to download it and have a read, all right? It is fairly heavy reading to begin with, because this is, one of their documents, but do not be put off by it. Trust me, by the end of the first page, you'll start to get the hang of it. And by the end of the 26th page, you will be vomiting at the plans that are in store for all Australians. Okay? Vote no. There can be only one vote in this referendum if it actually happens. No. And you can see by the squealing that the Labor Party are doing at the moment, saying that, the arguments being put forward are all bullshit, and they're making things up. Well, nobody's making anything up. The main crux of the argument has been, up until Credlin got this information out through FOI, the main crux of the argument has been these lying pricks in Parliament, Labor or Liberal, refuse to give us the detail on what a yes result would mean. All they're saying is, oh, yeah, we'll give the Aboriginal people a voice in the Parliament. Well, it won't be in the Parliament. It'll be above the Parliament. They won't have veto. No, but they have just about everything else. So, no, not going to work. And if you needed a better example of what a yes vote for the voice will do to this country, you only need to look at Western Australia and what's gone on with their cultural heritage laws that they brought in a month ago now. They have had nothing but absolute madness being conducted in their state since then, with tree plantings not being able to go ahead, and like $500,000 worth of trees dying because they couldn't get planted, couldn't get be put in the ground where they were meant to be. And this was a land project that was putting trees back into an area that had lost trees because of a bushfire that had been through there. And people had come from hundreds and hundreds of kilometres away, hundreds of people, to help plant thousands of trees. And what happened? No, somebody walked up and said, no, it's my land. You've got to give me $250 million or whatever the hell it was. It wasn't that much, but yeah, you got to pay me before you can do that. Then I thought the piece de resistance was when the West Australian government was opening a new part of a multi-lane highway south of Perth. And, of course, they have the Welcome to Country ceremony, and two people turned up to do that, and they wound up having a fight trying to figure out which one had the rights to do Welcome to Country or the smoking ceremony. Of course, had either of them been told they weren't going to be paid for that ceremony, neither of them would have bothered doing it. Thank God for places like Broken Hill, the council in Broken Hill, and others now who are standing up. I am led to believe just in my area, in the east of Brisbane, local councils pay thousands of dollars for Welcome to Country and smoking ceremonies at their events. Thousands of dollars. Now, as was pointed out in the Broken Hill Council, when they decided that they would no longer continue paying for that Welcome to Country service, it was made clear, and the question asked, if you have to be paid to give a Welcome to Country, is it really a Welcome to Country? Isn't it more then about who gets paid and how that money is shared? How many other people get to be involved in the ceremony? How many more people get paid? Bear in mind, every person involved in the ceremony gets a fee, and it could be as little as $50 in some areas. It could, in all likelihood, in city and urban areas, go to many thousands of dollars. And that's how these people get their extra every month. Oh, yeah, I got to go and do a smoking ceremony. I got to go and do this. I got to go and do that. Listen, if you want to welcome people to country, don't ask to be paid for it. It's not a very genuine welcome. And I think a lot of people have felt that way. It just took a local council in the shape of Broken Hill to ask the question initially and kick it off. And then, well, the rebuttal comes, oh, nobody will come and do it. Nobody will come and do the ceremony. Well, of course they will. There's always somebody in the community who wants to welcome others into their community. And that's exactly what Broken Hill and other council areas have found. Since they've stopped the corporate paying system of paying the locals who wants to do it, and no doubt, to be the person who wants to do this, you've got to be at the top of the pecking order in your local area. Because this essentially gives you, the bank, the keys to the bank. If they're going to pay you a couple of $1,000s every time there's a Welcome to Country required, you want to get out there and promote yourself as the person to be doing Welcome to Countries, and everybody should be having a Welcome to Country, whether or not it's a council or whether or not it's a business who's just welcoming a new client onto their yard. And I've heard of those sort of ceremonies happening too, for a fee. So let's pull the fees. No more fees for welcome to country or smoking ceremonies. If you want to do it, that's great. Love to have you as part of it. But it has to be a genuine from the heart kind of thing, not a genuine from the wallet kind of thing. Because if it's from the wallet, it sort of doesn't mean as much. Maybe that's just me, but that's certainly how I feel about it. Yep, Tony Abbott, I see somebody pointed out, gave him $140 million. I'm not sure if you're talking about the UN or the Clintons, but it didn't work out so well for Tony. Tony fought back and hence was unceremoniously dethroned by Malcolm Turnbull. And, well, wasn't that a great win for the country, really? I probably would have preferred the Ungern Muncher. But, yeah, Malcolm Turnbull, he is a piece of work. And I am so suspicious of Malcolm Turnbull that I believe he is certainly wealthy enough, certainly capable enough, and certainly shrewd enough to set up his own media organization. And it just might be, can't prove it yet, but it just might be that TNT radio is a 100% wholly owned Malcolm Turnbull production. If it's not Malcolm Turnbull, it's another very, very, very deep-pocketed billionaire, because that little organization gets no donations, takes no sponsorship, doesn't even try and sell advertising. And I can tell you, their running costs are into the many tens of thousands of dollars per week. By the time they pay their wages, they sort out their internet transmission bits and pieces and pay off all their equipment. They're looking at many tens of thousands of dollars a week. In fact, I could tell you the exact number just about. Where are they getting that money? That's the question. And who's paying them to tell the stories they're telling? Because I can tell you, from my perspective and from Damien Richardson, who also worked there, they do tell you, oh, yeah, go as close as you like, go as hard on conspiracy as you like, yada, 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 yada. Well, I did, and so did Damo. And they got rid of both of us because we started talking about things they didn't want us to talk about. Right? That's how it worked. One day they're on the phone telling me how bloody wonderful it's all going and how wonderful it is. I got the most downloaded, interview on their platform ever, yada, yada, yada. The next day, an email, you're sacked. Well, there was only one thing I spoke about in the interim. There was only one show. And there were two things in that one show that made me think, well, maybe it was that got me sacked. The first one was mentioning a beam and a picture of that beam that I had coming out of Black Mountain Tower that was spreading, a ray, if you like, at 52 degrees Celsius down onto the million or more people in front of Parliament House that day. That's where a lot of your burns came from. And the other thing I mentioned was Malcolm Turnbull and his $10 million investment into a Russian climate-changing organization, all to do with cloud seeding. And we had a reasonably in-depth conversation about that. In fact, I was on air with Sean Ambrose at the time talking about it. And 9 o'clock the next morning, or 9:30 the next morning, the email arrived that we'd been sacked. So TNT Radio, before you go believing too much comes out of it, get a look at who owns it. And when you struggle like I do to find out who actually owns it, maybe that will raise a couple of questions for you. Maybe you'll start thinking, what's controlled about this? Nothing, surely. It's also interesting, the two people that they've got in there running the thing. I mean, fair dinkum, they couldn't run a shit show in a diarrhea factory. But it's just interesting who they are. And when you delve into histories, worth a look too. So who knows? Got better things to go looking at the moment, but one day I might turn my attention really into TNT and have a good look. I think we'd be very surprised at some of the money that is behind there. So I'm just having a bit of a glance down here, folks, trying to see a few of your questions. Yeah, Suze, I've got to say I am with you on that. However, like I said, Roberts is building a foundation of evidence. Now, whether or not he gets to present that evidence or that evidence is something we get to use later on when we take all of them, I don't really mind. Roberts is the only person at this point in time, and other senators, who can build this timeline, if you like, and get all the information into that timeline. Now, what happens at the end, because yes, all the politicians are going to have to go, including him and Rennick and others. They've only, as you say, just started to open up at the end and started to champion the people. They could have been doing this much earlier, and all of them chose not to. So I treat the politicians, which is probably why they don't talk to me, pretty much the same way. You had your chance, you blew it, and now you're just throwing Band-Aids on. However, they are useful Band-Aids, particularly in the case of Malcolm Roberts and what he's trying to get through the big pharma companies and the TGA and the APRA folks, because he's going to stitch them all up in a nice little box where they're all going to be blaming each other, and it will be quite clear that the health minister and APRA will be the ones that are going to need to take most of the heat on this. And of course, then there'll be those doctors we spoke about earlier who are also going to have to face judgment on this. And there will be. We are not going to let any of this get away. You are not going to be able to get away from this with an excuse. Oh, I was only doing my job. That is not going to happen. Redmond, what do we got here? Yeah. Now, it's interesting. I agree 100% with what you're saying. Words mean things. Now, I was having this chat over the weekend with someone else, and the word trauma came up. Now, the context that the word trauma came up in wasn't very traumatic. All right, like what was being described to me as trauma wasn't even, on face value, I think for most people, very traumatic. But the use of the word trauma instigates a response in people. And that's because we've spent our formative years watching American TV, where trauma wards are all the go. Get into trauma 1. ICU, there's trauma coming through the door. Road trauma, helicopter trauma, everything's a trauma. And quite rightly so, because I dare say in hospitals and ER wards, it is quite traumatic. But trauma is now a trigger word, and it's being used, and people are being triggered for very small things that ordinarily would not be traumatic, if you like, for most people. But now, because the word is in the vernacular, it is being weakened. It is being used in areas where it's not. I gained fingernail trauma because I was, picking at a fingernail and broke it off down to the quick. Or I've got traffic trauma because I can't stand being stuck in traffic while I'm driving to work, and I, bashed the steering wheel, and now I've got bruised hands. This isn't trauma. This is stupidity. Trauma is a word that should be reserved for only the most significant medical, psychological, or evil sorts of things, in my belief, because we are MK Ultraing ourselves with words like that and reacting to them. Yes, trauma is a bad word, but I see trauma as a significant word in an ER sense, but do I see it as traumatic for me to question somebody's biological status? Are you male or female? Is that traumatic? Is it traumatic if I call you a he or a she instead of a they or a them? Is that really traumatic? And if it is as traumatic as an ER ward, then my suggestion would be to those people who find it that way, go and get yourself mentally tested, because you are not strong mentally if something like that is going to traumatize you. So trauma is a word that initiates a response, a visceral response in people. They immediately think the worst: road trauma, car crash, blood, guts, bits everywhere. That's what people come up with. But then, you know, what are we going to call it? Gender trauma. Is that as significant? Does it require the same response? Not in my opinion. Just a thought. You don't have to agree. Nobody says you've got to agree. That's a great thing about this this show, this country, this world, and this life. You get to do what you like, provided you understand the consequences of your decisions. John Milne, now you've given me an idea. Yes, that is very, very good. You've given me an idea. I do remember the goodies. I do remember A Walk in the Black Forest. That's very good. We might have a bit of fun with that. Thank you for the thought. Pardon me. Just going to see if there's any questions down here. Thank you, Appy. Yep, if the voice mattered, then your rights wouldn't already be written in French. Oh, speaking of French, did I bring it in? I probably didn't bring it in. There is a picture floating around. No, I haven't saved it. There is a picture floating around of a couple of the latest Barbie moviegoers in Canada. That would be Justin Trudeau and his son. Neither of them able to wear pink, unfortunately. He's wearing sort of an apricot and his boy's wearing a purple. Oh, well, good as you can get. Somebody I was talking to the other day said they had been to go and see the Barbie movie. Personally, I'd prefer to go anywhere and pick my eyes out with blunt spoons, but apparently it's worth going to see. For blokes. Did I mention that? It's good for blokes to go and see. I don't know. I never played with Barbie much, and Ken wasn't my kind of bloke. So I don't have much of a Barbie history. It might be all a bit lost on me. But apparently there are some wonderful things in the Barbie movie for us all. And Justin Trudeau and his son have gone out to wave the flag. I'm sure Albo will be going out for it anytime soon, or maybe he just got a private showing with his lady friend back at the lodge. Anything's possible for that. Thank you so much, Elsa, for your super sticker. Appreciate it very much. I really do appreciate everybody who donates to the Voice of Freedom and who's decided to be a member. You've no idea how important that membership money turns out to be, at least once a month. And the donations that come through, thank you very much from the bottom of my heart. I couldn't continue doing this. In fact, one of the things that I struggle with is maintaining internet connections and all that sort of stuff, because I don't just have to maintain one, I have to maintain 4 internet connections, otherwise nothing will get out. So there's that and a few other bits and pieces. So without you guys, it would be impossible for me to keep doing what I'm doing. To that end, we're also trying to raise some money for a company that we are starting at the moment too, and I've been working pretty hard on that for the last couple of weeks, speaking with investors, potentially to get behind this program, which will enable us to put Voice of Freedom in your town, in your place, anywhere, anytime, practically. and it will give us the ability to come on the road and tell your stories, which I think are the most important part of what we're doing. We can bring education, we can bring knowledge, but most of all, we want to bring your stories to everybody, good, bad, and indifferent. And I'm not just talking about COVID-related stories or coughing stories or anything like that. We want to help your business. If you've got a business, then let's help. There are a lot of people who view this show not necessarily live, but over the 24 hours or so afterwards. And if you've got a product that can be sold and sent to anybody, then we would love to try and help you promote those products. If you are a tourist business and you want people to know about your business, then and you particularly want the Freedom family to know about your business, then let us know. We can help. We want to send people your way. This is a family after all, and while the Voice of Freedom family is quite large and significant, there are other freedom groups who have families as well. You might well be part of them, but we want them all to come together, and we want them all to come together for a reason, because when we come together, our power will be unbeatable, and that goes the same for other broadcasters like myself. Provided they're doing the right thing, provided they're not, maintaining their secret oath to their Freemason mates, provided they're not ripping people off and buying new jet skis or ignoring important phone calls so they can go surfing, then I'm all for it. I'm here to help. And I will fight every step of the way. And we need a way to do this 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So that's where the investors come in. It's a company deal, so you'll be buying assets. If the company, for whatever reason, turns turtle, we'll sell the assets, you get your money back. It's not about a wealth creation program for me. In fact, we haven't even talked about anything in it for me yet. And that doesn't concern me. What concerns me is getting this up and going, because without it, we can't do much for you. With it, we can take on the mainstream media. I know, bit of a boast, but I believe there's enough talented people out there to come on board and to help. But we need to have them somewhere to come on board too. So that's what we're aiming to produce with the Voice of Freedom. If you are in business and you want to help, we would love to hear from you. You can email Rachel at vofhq.com and we'll get you some more details. If you would like to be involved in the company and you want to be an investor, then you can email me, Carl, at vofhq.com. I will forward that on to Cass Smith, and she'll have a conversation with you, letting you know where we are in the process and what we're looking for. Now, at the moment, it's very difficult to get investors with just $100 or $200 that want to throw in. It's very welcome, and we can probably do something like that. However, we are looking for investors of about $5,000 and up at the moment. Now, we are a bit over halfway to our goal, with hopefully some good news coming a little later on this week about another supporter coming on board, another sponsor coming on board, which will help. But if you want to learn more, email me. I'm happy to tell you all about it. I've got a little bit of paper I can send you. But this is stage one, if you like, of a multi-stage plan. The radio station is also part of that plan. There is another channel idea that is also part of that plan, and that channel will stream 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So it'll simply be a matter of turning, well, at this stage, probably a Rumble channel on. And you might find a whole heap of presenters coming across you. But we're in the early stages. It takes a lot to create, and it can't be done for nothing, unfortunately. I mean, I can do my bits for nothing. God knows I have been. However, I can't do everything, and I need other people involved. You're going to get sick and tired of hearing me sooner or later. So you can't have me on the radio 24/7. But what we do want to make sure is the presenters that we do put on are pushing the right message. They're in tune with us, in alignment with our beliefs. And going forward, we can unite more groups together, unite our strength, unite our power, and eventually we will overcome. But we need to unite first, folks. We need to unite. We need to get rid of the piss ants, as old mate John Wilson calls them. And thankfully, they're getting rid of themselves, which is pretty nice. It's a lovely thing to watch. You all know I'm one of those give them enough rope kind of people, and that's exactly what we've been doing with a great many of the freedom fighters. Supposedly fighting for freedom, but are they? I think now it's quite clear that many of them have been doing nothing but looking after themselves, and thankfully many people have started seeing that. That's great. For whatever reason, I'm sure, because I'm not hiding anything. I haven't seen that loss of followers, thankfully, touch wood. And that's because I hope you know that everything I'm saying and doing is quite genuine, and I have people around me to guarantee transparency. I'm not going to get caught up in this bullshit of he said, she said, somebody took some money here, somebody did. I'm not going to do it. Not part of it. Not interested in it. What I am interested in doing is uniting us all for a better future. I'm interested in raising our overall vibration, our overall frequency. I want to step into that next level. I want to step up into 5D. I'm excited to learn more about it. And I'm really excited to see some of the technologies and whatnot that are going to be released sooner or later. That's the most frustrating part about it. But as if you're watching what's happening with Donald Trump at the moment, you are seeing a giant jigsaw puzzle being put together, and a couple of very, very big pieces went in the course of the last few days with his 4 new indictments in Washington, D.C. over January 6th. That is going to be some of the most entertaining viewing over the coming months, folks, as Donald Trump's law team gets stuck into subpoenaing evidence about January 6th, but also the election, because it is the election fraud they've apparently charged him over. So that opens up the entire election process for him to start questioning and gaining subpoena evidence from. It's all going to come out, folks. It's all going to come out. And when you think about it, it has to come out this way, because with 330 million Americans holding 785 million bloody guns, they have to convince the most of them that Biden was illegitimately elected. They stole the election, and this is how. And Trump in a court is the only way to prove it. It really is one of the most spectacular mind games I've ever seen. It is 5D chess, as we've heard it described many, many, many times. It is unbelievable. So a lot of talk going on about councils at the moment. I'm not going to keep going for much longer. A lot of talk going on about councils at the moment, local councils in particular. Now, I know My Place are doing some really great stuff. I'm not sure if it's tomorrow night. There is a My Place event happening in Frankston. People might want to get along to that. Go to My Place Frankston and have a look on their Facebook page. You have to register to go to this event. And I want to say it's a common law of, oh, no, it's not. It's King Ulikai and Craig Oldroyd giving a speech there. I think it's tomorrow night. So if you haven't already done that, you're down in Melbourne, My Place Frankston on Facebook, or myplaceaustralia.org if you want to find the nearest My Place near you. Darren rang me yesterday and I didn't get back to him today. I will make an attempt tomorrow to get a hold of him, and who knows, he might be on the show tomorrow night to give us a little bit of an update. But Ulikai and Craig Oldroyd will be presenting their position constitutionally going forward to the folks at My Place in Frankston. As I say, I think it's tomorrow night. It's not tomorrow night, it's Thursday. But go to My Place Frankston on Facebook. They will have all the details there. And pop along. I think you might find it's a very interesting presentation. And I met Ulikai and Craig at the airport here in Brisbane a couple of weeks ago. I didn't get to see their presentation as such. We did have a very good conversation. And I'm looking forward to hearing more about this event that they're putting on down in Frankston and the upshot of it. I think probably the biggest question for me with Craig and Ulukai at the moment is what they're trying to achieve and how they're achieving it. I know that they're discussing plans with various tribes around the nation, and obviously they haven't been to them all yet. But there does seem to be an element of confusion in some of the tribes that I've spoken to, at least, who have signed on to this mission, if you like, that Ulukai and Craig are on. And an element of confusion to it. So I'm hopeful that that'll get explained in the My Place meeting, and if not, then I'll have Craig on in the not too distant future to touch base, and we will see if we can't get to the bottom of that. But rest assured, the no vote is what's being proffered going forward. There is no future for our First Nations people if they vote yes. You will lose all rights, all rights. And ask yourself, folks, why is Albanese and his government so hell-bent on trying to impress 3% of the population by going to something like Gama over the weekend? It shouldn't be too hard to figure out, okay? It's a payoff because of the corporate black money that's been spent by the government, put through their corporate black operatives. That money, $34 billion a year of it, doesn't all flow into the community. In fact, very little of it flows to the community, and those corporate Aborigines in charge of it make sure that only what absolutely, positively has to get through gets through. The rest of it, I am going to suggest to you, in my opinion, does what most other big government money does, and that's circle its way back to the politician somewhere in a brown paper bag or some other way. That has to stop. It has to stop. Vote no. Maintain your sovereignty. Vote no. And 3% of the population isn't going to change the vote. So the white people are going to decide this vote, folks. Do not allow yourself to be called racist if you tell someone you are going to vote no. Just explain to them, make sure you know why you're voting no, and explain to them why. Ask them, do they understand what a yes vote actually means? Do they understand what the government intends to put into the Constitution? Because nobody knows that unless it is the Uluru Statement from the Heart. 26 pages of grief, theft, and you owe us. That's essentially what it is. They want to rewrite. No, they don't want to rewrite. They want to remove the last 240 years of Australian settlement history. That's what the Statement from the Heart is all about. We cannot afford a yes vote here, folks. Nobody in this country can afford a yes vote except for the politicians, because you know why? They're going to get their payoff. They're the only ones who want the yes vote. And they know it's going to pay them off for years. So we can't afford that, folks. Can't afford that at all. All right, let me just have a bit of a scan down here, see if there is anything here. Yeah, thanks, Wacko. Jack Smith is the prosecutor that's leveled these charges against Trump, and he has left himself wide open for Trump's team to present evidence against him that they already have. There is a ton of evidence already against him. If you had to pick a special prosecutor to go after Trump, you would have to be brain dead to have picked this guy. There is so many little bad things stuck away deep in his closet. And I dare say we're going to be made aware of every one of them in the coming days and weeks. Trump tweeted, or no, truthed. Is that how you say? On Truth Social, he put out, "If you come after me, I am coming after you." That Jack Smith went to the Washington courts and said, "I've been threatened. I've been threatened." There was no mention of Jack Smith in any of the post at all that Trump put up. He just was basically making a general statement. If you come after me, I'll come after you, which does seem like a reasonably fair statement for anybody to make. In fact, I recently had to make a similar statement to the next door neighbour who threatened to come after me. Well, that's a two-way street. And as we both know where each other lives, it can be a fairly dangerous proposition. So, sometimes stupid threats are stupid threats. Sometimes you've got to act on them. And we need to act on the stupid threat that is all of this, our government, the US government, and the threat to, well, basically humanity. That's entirely what it is. And if you haven't figured that part out yet, then I guess we're all in deep shit. Ted Turner. Now, there is an interesting connection. Ted Turner. Well, he certainly got the money for it. And I know the paychecks came out of a routed, when you get your payment invoice thing, they say we've paid you, whatever that thing's called. That actually came through a rerouting email service. So whoever sent it to them, and it got remailed from that remailing service to me. So I could never track where the payments were coming from. Very interesting. But yeah, there was talk that there was an American billionaire involved. But why would an American billionaire be interested in TNT radio in Australia? Well, admittedly, there are only, I think, a couple of Australian presenters. Most of it comes from overseas. They have presenters that are based in America and in Europe. And most of them are second-rate or not professional broadcasters. They've run around and found some people who had a few things to say. I being one of them initially. And unfortunately, though, the window for Australian broadcasting was only at the time about 4 hours. Don't think much has changed. And quite frankly, the people running the shit show here in Australia couldn't deal with any more than 4 hours of local programming a day. They just couldn't. Drive them insane, and probably the people who were trying to put the programming out as well. So no. Who owns TNT Radio and why? That is the question. Why? Because it's another story. I've gone nearly an hour and a half. I'm not going to go into that. But maybe another night we'll talk more about TNT Radio. If you have any insights, I'd love to hear them. Carl@vofhq.com. And we'll go from there. But who owns them? That's the interesting bit for me. Where's the money coming from? Because it clearly is a bottomless pit of money. Over 30 grand a week it's costing them to run that show, run that station. And I'd like to know where they're getting it from. Really would. All very secretive, all things that we don't necessarily like too much in this game either. So some questions, shall we put it at that? Some questions, I think, would be the way. All right, folks, I'm going to love you and leave you for tonight. Didn't get the caravan delivered today. That's going to be a Saturday job now because I don't have the time between now and, none of us actually have the time between now and then to do what needs to be done. The next few days are going to be pretty busy. So we will be back on again tomorrow night, hopefully with a bit of news and something to cheer a few folks up. And if you are heading out into the big wide world in the next 24, 48 hours or so, you're going to do it on the road, then just make sure, folks, you do it in style and stay clear of the dickheads.
You let one ant stand up to us, then they all might stand up. Those puny little ants outnumber us 100 to 1. And if they ever figure that out, there goes our way of life. It's not about food. It's about keeping those ants in line. That's why we're going back.
Does anybody else want to stay?
Let's ride!
Oh, I'm still here. Hang on. I'll say good night. Good night.